Hey guys, Mike Smith here with Killer Motorsports. A lot of people ask us when they get their go-karts, what's the PDI, what's the maintenance, what's the assembly, long-term, short-term, braking period, so forth. So we're basically going to explain to you what the manufacturers tell us, us mechanics, what do we need to do to these units. You always want to have a mechanic do this work for you. If you're brave enough to do it yourself, then here's basically what we're instructed to do from the manufacturer. When you get the unit, you got to put the roll cage, wheels, tires on, so forth. When you're putting all these bolts in, so forth, down here on the frame, the wheels, all these shock bolts stuff, I would suggest to use blue Loctite. Blue Loctite's going to make sure that the bolts don't go anywhere. As you ride this thing, it's always going to be rattling, vibrating, so forth. It's going to ensure that the nuts don't go anywhere. After you ride the unit for the first 4 rides, go over every bolt on this thing. After every ride to make sure that they're staying tight. You always want to check the bolts, before you go riding. Hey, the wheels, are they tight? Is the thing rattling? Before you get in and just take off this thing and start riding and stuff, is just to be safe. You just go over it real quick. Make sure, are the bolts tight? Is there anything that's just loose that we need to be aware of before you go ride? It's anything you want to do, whether it's Chinese, Honda, Yamaha, and so forth. You want to make sure you just go over it to make sure everything is where it needs to be, essentially. When you go and you assemble your unit, what you want to do is first let it run for about 20 minutes. What it's going to do is the motor itself back here is going to be a heat seal. And what it's doing is you've got your motor block, you've got your cylinder, you've got your head, you've got gasket in between there. First 20 minutes of this thing running, it needs to just sit here, and those gaskets are essentially going to melt. And what it's going to do is going to provide just a clear seal on there. That way you don't have any pressure leaks out of there. And if you just, you don't want to get in it and just hit the gas and just go railing around the corners and doing full throttle. So what it can do is you build up so much pressure is it breaks the seals in that gasket, and you can't. It can cause oil leaks, it can cause pressure. Air leaks in there. So first 20 minutes, that's what you want to do. Just let it sit here. Most of these are going to be air cooled, some are water cooled. So if it's air cooled, make sure if it's hot, you get a fan on this motor, so that way the motor stays cool while it's running. After you do that, you're going to change the oil in this thing. Now, change oil in this thing. You've got a 17mm bolt on the bottom of this. Make sure that the engine's cooled off. That you're not going to burn yourself with the oil coming out here. Go ahead and drain the oil. When you get the oil drained, you're going to go ahead and fill the oil back up on the motor. And to do that, you have your dipstick right here, and you're going to put, if it's on a 150, you're going to put 1.5 quarts. If it's on a 90, it's about 1 quart. A 250 could require 2 quarts. Refer to the manual that comes with your unit so you know how much oil to put in it. Make sure you do semi to non-synthetic oil. Don't put synthetic oil in it because it can actually eat your gaskets because of the cleaning additives that it has. It can cause problems. Use 4-stroke oil, like I say, 10W40. Don't do 2050 or whatever oil you want. You got to use that type of oil. It's the best stuff we found to use in these motors. You want to change your oil. Once you go ahead and change it, you want to go ahead and after every hard ride, if you go out for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, change your oil. You don't want to go for months and months without doing that. After every long weekend hard ride, change oil. It's going to keep the motor fresh. It's going to keep any dirt, any grime, any shards, or anything in that motor. It's going to keep it clean. It's going to keep it fresh. So everything's going to stay lubed up real good. As your motor gets, as the oil gets hot, you burn off a lot of the additives in it, and it can start gunking up that motor oil. So you got to make sure that you do change it every once in a while. It keeps it lubed. You also have your air filter right here. A lot of the go-karts are going to have air filters either right here or located up underneath, back behind the seat. If you do a long weekend ride and there's a lot of dirt, a lot of sand, make sure you take this filter out, clean it with some air filter cleaner, dry it out, and then stick it back in there. This will ensure that your engine's breathing good, that it's running right, and you don't have dirt just clogging it all up so your motor's not running right. As you can see here, you want to make sure you keep on your bolts. You don't want it to look like this. This is a customer's unit. Obviously, he didn't keep up on the bolts, so now he's missing a nut here. So we'll have to fix that for him. On all the go-karts, you've got your chain adjustments. Some come shaft driven, so you don't have to do chain adjustments. If your chain is loose, then what you got to do is tighten this bolt here. Your chain's right behind this cover here. You're going to take this cover off, and then if you feel that your chain is loose, go ahead and tighten this down right here. Tighten this nut down, and clockwise, and it's going to tighten the chain. If you go counterclockwise, it'll loosen the chain. Make sure your chain is always tight. Another thing you want to do is gas. Make sure you're running premium gas in here. You don't want to run regular, don't want to run mid-grade, you want to run premium. This will ensure that you have the maximum temperature running these things. The premium gas runs a little hotter, so it's going to give you optimal performance in these motors. Make sure you run premium. The additives also help it run a lot better. As you're also riding the go-karts here, you've got your pedals, and your pedals, you want to make sure that these throttle cables right here are adjusted properly. You've got your adjustments right here. The more you take it out, the more leeway you're not going to have on here. So if you feel that you're having to push the pedal all the way to the floor before it starts giving gas, adjust that cable out, but don't go too much because you don't want to let the go-kart, as soon as you start it, just take off on you. You want to have a mechanic do that here so it's done properly. Always make sure that your cables are adjusted properly in terms of forward, neutral, reverse, or if you're shifting. You've got cable adjustments that are in the back here. If you find that it's getting hard to get it in gear, chances are your cable's stretched out a little bit, which they will do over time. You need to go ahead and do your cable adjustment in the back. You need to have a mechanic do that. So you can check out our find a service center on our website, find a mechanic near you, and they'll be able to do all these adjustments for you that I'm talking about. You want to make sure your steering wheel is always tight. This guy's right here is a little loose. You want to make sure that you keep your back nuts on the steering wheel tight. That way, you're basically going to pull this drive bar into back to steering wheel to keep the actual drive actually tight. If it's real loose, it can cause problems, so forth. Make sure all your lights work when you get the unit. Make sure if you've got blinkers, if the blinkers work, horn works. Everything's right here in the dash, so you just want to make sure all that works. Make sure your kill switch works, so forth. Whenever you get it, the seats also adjust, so make sure that the bolts for the bottom of the seats are on the bottom. So make sure you do adjust. If your seats do adjust, whether they do or don't, make sure you're checking your seat bolt. If you have some bolts fly off, you hit a jump, then your seat can basically just pop off. So make sure you check those bolts as well. It's long term. It's not like a 60,000 mile tune up whenever you go to a car dealership. If you keep up with your normal, you're going to go like say Friday, Saturday, Sunday is the hard weekend ride. Do your oil, do your bolts, do your air filter clean, go over the unit, and if you do that every time you go to that long ride, then you won't have to do total maintenance every 6 months. You just have to do it every long ride. If you have any questions or need any parts, feel free to give us a call.